Today we have a very special guest, and we met him at a chamber luncheon. Oh, well, actually, we heard him at a chamber luncheon. Mr. Andy Rodriguez. Andy, thanks for coming to RadioKair.
Thanks for the invite.
Absolutely. We're so proud to have you. Andy came at the chamber luncheon where they were honoring veterans, and Andy is a veteran himself. And thank you for your service. And we actually mean that. I know a lot of people say it, but it means a lot to us. My father was a veteran of the Second World War, and he fought in both theaters. Mm-hmm. And a family gives up a lot to the veteran. While they're at war, the veteran gives up his life for that whole time he's fighting and serving his country. And I want to thank you for that. It means much. So at the luncheon, you played a guitar, mm-hmm. and you sang a beautiful song. Matter of fact, it moved people to tears. And it was and is a beautiful song. But how did you get involved in music?
Well, it started when I was very, very young. Mm-hmm. My uncle had been in the Second World War. He was in the Navy, mm-hmm. and he was in South Pacific. He was at Pearl. He went into the Med.
Wow.
And so he got around. Mm-hmm. And so while he was over in the Med in that area, he got a little souvenir, a little concertina, and he brought mm-hmm. it home to his big sister, my mother.
Ah.
And so one day when I was very, very young, I think still in diapers, maybe mm-hmm. a couple of years old, 2 or 3 years old, I started playing around with a little concertina. And she got all excited because there were a couple of notes that I hit that kind of went together, or so she thought. So
right. At least in her mind.
In her mind. Right. And so it wasn't long before she got all, like I said, she was all excited, and she was a big fan of Lawrence Welk and Myron Florin. And so I was graduated from a concertina to an accordion.
Okay.
And that was not something I was super keen on, but it was like, okay, it's something to do,
right.
you know. What do I know? I'm just 3, 4, 5 years old, you know, right. And I was doing okay with it. Took a couple of lessons here and learned how to do the squeeze, you know. Finally got up to on the bass side where there was 256 buttons and the keyboard over on the right. And it was, okay, it was something that made Mom happy. And then...
That's I don't know how people can do it, but go ahead.
Yeah.
It's very complex.
And then some blokes from Liverpool decided to cross the pond.
Oh, yes.
And I was able to talk my dad into letting me swap the accordion for a guitar.
Ah.
And so he got me a nice little classical guitar, mm-hmm. and that's kind of how I got my start, listening to, at that time, most of it was all AM radio.
Right.
Okay. And so I'd listen to the music, and I'd try to play along with it, and I'd go find bottles and save up bottles and then cash them in. Back then you could do that kind of stuff.
Absolutely.
And so I could buy me a 45 or eventually
an album
or something like that. Right. And then I would take that album or that 45 and then I'd learn the song. So I
played over and over.
Played it over and over and over again.
I'm sure your parents appreciated that.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. So that's kind of where I got started in music.
Sure. And well, that's good. So you were more or less self-taught.
Pretty much, especially on the guitar. I mean, I had a few lessons on the accordion, but they don't really translate, you know.
Right.
So I taught myself to play mostly by ear and fingers, but
that's impressive. I've had a number of guitars in my life and ukuleles. That's kind of my I love ukulele. Never learned how to play either one of them. I'm just I can't even play the radio well, you know. So it's just the way it is. So
the guitars,
I leave it to good guys like y'all.
That's kind of where I got my start, just playing, and got to a point where I could play. They started this. At that time, I had been an altar boy when it was still in Latin. Okay.
Wow. All right.
And so they were phasing in this new thing called the folk mass.
Right.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was lucky enough to, and I guess my courting was acceptable enough to be able to play along at the folk mass. And so when I was in elementary, I was doing that.
Wow.
So
okay.
I just went, and I wasn't singing, or if I did, it was just, along with everybody else.
Right,
but I focused
where it
on
be drowned out. And
yeah,
all that.
absolutely. Cause I'm not a singer. Right.
Well, I don't know. I thought you were pretty good,
But that's kind of where I got started, and music from then on became a central focal point in my life. I got into other things. I played a little ball, baseball, football, basketball. Ended up being a swimmer in high school,
good.
but it was always music. The choir, the concert choir.
Okay.
The touring group in high school, stuff like that. And so I always wanted to be, music was central to what I was doing. Everything else was just kind of peripheral.
Music was in your soul, as they say.
Yeah.
Part of you, right?
Yeah.
Absolutely. So you spent some years in the Air Force.
Mm-hmm.
Did you musically do anything in the Air Force?
No, I didn't.
Okay.
I was when I went in, it was right after high school.
Mm-hmm.
About 2 weeks after high school, I was in San Antonio. Basically, everybody. I was in the Air Force,
right?
So basically, everybody in the Air Force comes from San Antonio.
Got you.
Basically speaking.
Basic. Oh, boom.
Yeah.
I need a drum roll on that one.
Yeah, right. And so
so that would be Ellington.
That was.
I'm sorry. Tell me the base.
Lackland.
Lackland, of course.
Lackland Air Force Base.
So there were 3 bases, right? Or 2?
There were, I think at that time, 5 military installations surrounding San Antonio.
Right. I know one was Army, but there were
Fort Sam Houston, Randolph, Medina, Lackland, Kelly.
Oh, yes. Okay.
And so those were the primary military installations around the San Antonio area.
But Lackland was the basic
training.
Yeah. Right.
So
Still is, I think.
Yes. Yeah. As far as I know, they haven't changed that name. I know they've changed some names of some other military installations recently, but not that one. But no, during the military, I didn't play as much because I was being deployed, doing a lot of TDYs. And so, but whenever I was back on base, I still had my guitar, and I got involved with the chapel there on base. I was stationed at Bergstrom over in Austin.
Right.
So I got involved with a folk group there. And when I got out, I stayed in Austin, stayed participating with a folk group, decided to go back to school, met a cute little redhead. And, she felt that it was, well, I'm lucky. She accepted me as her mercy mission for life. So, we've been together now for 47 years.
Good for you. Congratulations.
Thank you.
That's good. Good to find the right mate.
Yeah.
It really is.
But no, and after I got out, while I was in Austin back in the 70s, I got out the year after Vietnam ended. And Austin was a music town even back then. I mean, you had the Armadillo World Headquarters.
Oh, that's right.
And you had some new guys that were just coming out, Michael Martin Murphy, Stevie Ray Vaughan, Willie. All those guys were, central to that area back in the early 70s. So it was a good time to be in Austin.
That's when Willie got tired of Nashville and decided, and that's when his career really took off. So
and so I went down over off, I think, Lamar or something like that. There was a place called Heart of Texas Music, Ray Hennig's Heart of Texas Music, and I got me my first real guitar. I appreciated what Dad got me. I still have it.
Oh, you were still using it at that point?
Oh yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Wow. But I got a Martin.
Well, you went from one to the top, right?
Now, keep in mind, this was back 76, so things were a little bit different then. Things were not quite as expensive. They were, I guess, proportionately, expensive, but I got a brand new D35, the case, 2 or 3 sets of strings, all the paraphernalia that goes with it, tax included, for about $640.
That's a lot of money, though, back then.
Back then it was.
That was a lot of money.
But that same guitar today,
yeah,
$3,000-$4,000.
Yeah.
And it's just like, and they don't sound as good as my old Martin,
Right.
So.
All right, so you got a new Martin,
Mm-hmm.
and I assume you played around the Austin area for a while?
A little bit. And then we got married, and back in the late 70s, there wasn't a whole heck of a lot of job opportunities in the Austin area. You were either student, okay, there's a lot of students over there. You worked for the IRS, the state government. I think IBM and Traycor may have been there, but there wasn't a whole lot of business job opportunities. So my wife and I ended up quitting our jobs. We were both working for a little jeans operation, House of Jeans, I think is what they called it. And we quit the same day, and we didn't even tell each other until we got home. So it's like, okay, what are we going to do? This was like the middle of March. Okay. And they said, well, let's see, what do we have left to do on our bills? Well, we paid the apartment, we paid the electricity. At the time I had a piano, and I was making payments on that, $32.32. And that was it. That's all we had.
Wow.
So we said, okay. And at that time we were month to month in the apartment. So I said, well, I can always go back up to Dallas. I can always get a job at this little company they got up there called TI. And so
that's Texas Instruments, right?
To some people, some other people call it tiny income, but no, we moved up there, packed up the smallest U-Haul that they had, and we moved up there on April 1st. It was a Saturday. And on Monday, I marked myself up to Texas Instruments, and by 3 o'clock that afternoon, I walked away with the job.
Good for you.
And so started working there, and started in quality, and that became my career field. Okay. Moved from one company to another, always looking for that next promotion, the next level.
Well, yes,
so I ended up doing a career, 40 some odd years in quality. And then before it was all over with, I was also involved in health, safety, and environmental. So my last corporate gig was a global director of QHSE for a subsea operation.
Oh, so, gotcha.
But music was always in the background.
So your cute little redhead married a musician.
Mm-hmm.
Bless her heart.
And our first date was going to the folk group for practice.
Wow. And she stuck with you.
Yeah.
See, there you go.
Yeah. Well, she loved music too. She could sing, and she was in the musicals and all that kind of stuff. So we both had that commonality.
Gotcha. Now, that was in Dallas, and then you moved around, I assume, following your career.
Not too many moves. Okay. Most of it was I stayed in the Dallas area. Okay, and I was fortunate enough to lead a little company up in Garland into their first one of a certification. There was it was 1772 DOD 1772. It was a certification for hybrid microcircuits and lines, and it was kind of a precursor to a little bit more. It hadn't come out yet, but I don't know if you've ever heard of ISO 9000 and the 14000. Yes. Well, I was on the forefront of that. Gotcha. Okay, I'd been working with after I got out of the service. I ended up working eventually back in DOD as a civilian, as a government QA guy.
Right.
And got in on the very beginnings of the ISO 9000 movement, became very knowledgeable and proficient in that, and became a consultant, helped companies. And so there was a company, a competitor of the company I was working for in Garland, that was in Tucson, and they kind of stole me away. They were looking for the same certification, and they had tried 2 or 3 previous times and been unsuccessful.
Right.
And since I had led the Garland company and we certified 3 divisions simultaneously. And so that got a little bit of a recognition. And so they said, okay, we're going to get this guy. So they offered me an 85% increase in pay from what I was.
My goodness.
And so I said, what do I do? It's like, well, you got to, make that jump, sometimes in your career.
It's your career. I mean, that's correct. Right?
And
you
so,
follow it.
And they said, okay, we'll do it. And so I was hired on to help build the team and guide their certification process, stuff like that.
And that was in Tucson?
That was in Tucson. And I said, well, you got to do this, 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 and this. Okay, we can do that and that, but we're not going to do that. I said, that's not an optional thing. That's a requirement of the standard. You got to do that. Well, you've been through it before. Talk to them. They'll understand. No, that's not how it works that way.
I know better than that with ISO.
Yeah.
So you were in Tucson for a while, and then you how'd you end up in this area?
Well, ended coming up here because I had been approached. I knew a guy up in Dallas. His guy's name was Paul Hogan, and he was another consultant, had built a consortium and had been working with a lot of good-sized companies, and he had a contact, one of his good buddies, down here in the Houston area. And they wanted to build an ISO program on a global basis for their company. And the company was ABS, the American Bureau of Shipping. Okay. And I'd never tackled a global project before, and it sounded like, okay, this sounds like a real challenge. Right. So that was back in 1991. So got here then, and the ISO first edition of the standard came out in 88. Okay, so this was 91. And so those first 2 or 3 years were embryonic.
Right.
Okay, and there were all of the certification houses were over in the UK. So if you wanted to get certified, you had to pay all of the expenses and travel fare and all that kind of stuff, plus the certification cost. So it was not unusual to get depending upon the size of your company, a 2 or 3 day audit, a week-long audit with 1 or 2 auditors, and pay $30,000-$40,000 for that audit.
Oh, yes. Matter of fact, numbers I'm remembering were substantially higher than that.
Oh, yeah. So there were some companies here in the States that said, well, we can do that too. So ABS started a division, ABS Quality Evaluations. They wanted to get into the registration business too. Oh. So I was wearing 2 hats at the time, helping corporate design their global system and implement that, and helping get QE started. And one of the reasons that they were interested in me is not only did I have a little bit of background in the ISO standards as a user and designer and implementer, but I was also bilingual.
Okay.
Okay. Right. And at the time, they didn't have very many bilinguals. I think they had one guy that spoke French or whatever. But anyway, so they wanted to open up that market. And so that's what brought me to Houston.
Okay. Very good. Now, you play gigs, or and I assume this whole time you were still playing now and then?
Yeah, but mostly at home, mostly in in the living room or in the bedroom or something like that. Just kind of playing by myself because I hadn't really explored. I'd played a little bit in church. We had been looking around and played in some praise and worship groups and stuff like that. But as far as anything outside of church, no, I had never. It hadn't even crossed my mind. And I guess it was in about 94, 95, something like that. I went to my first open mic, and I didn't know what an open mic was.
Oh my goodness!
And it's probably a good thing that I didn't, because I probably would have followed some foolhardy, and that would have been really disastrous.
Right.
But
Or they're throwing tomatoes at you.
Oh yeah. So I said, this is awesome. This is fantastic. I never knew such a thing existed. A friend of mine took me. There was a little place over in Atascocita called Austin's Bistro,
Okay.
and he took me. They used to do their open mics on Friday nights, and so we went one Friday night, and it blew me away. And all these people would get up there and they'd do their 3 or 4 songs, and then somebody else would come up and do their 3 or 4 songs, and over and over and over. And it's just like all night long that, and so.
Some good, some not so good, right?
But it was open mic. So by definition, you didn't have to be a professional. You didn't have to be great. It's, you're getting out there and you're getting your opportunity to do your songs, or, you want to do your cover of this or that.
And that's what most musicians want.
Mm-hmm.
They want to do their songs. They're not looking for stardom. They're not looking for the fame.
Right.
They're looking to have their music sung the way they wanted it sung, and have people enjoy it. And that just kind of blows me away. So we had a band, Tomfoolery, with Brian Garcia. I don't know if you know them. And they were here at the station, a 5-piece band. It was quite a thing. And they do it for what they call it, for the love of music, right? And how special that is. It really is for guys like you and him that are them that do that. So, but you play what, Americana music?
Yeah, that's probably the closest. If I was going to try to pigeonhole myself into something, that's probably the closest one. I grew up listening to and being influenced by people besides the Fab Four, right?
Right.
They were great to listen to, but I'm not sure how much of their music I really played.
Right.
Some of the early stuff maybe, but I liked and listened to stuff like Peter, Paul, and Mary. The Kingston Trio, Seeger, Dylan.
Right.
Okay. And what struck me was the storytelling.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
And not that I have anything against rock or electronic guitars or anything like that, electric guitars. I've got one. I love to play it.
Yeah.
But I grew up on an acoustic, grew up on classical, and that was my, I guess, my roots. Okay.
Sure.
So hearing that and hearing the story behind the song, you didn't always hear the story in some of the rock music.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
You heard a lot of loud.
Right.
Okay.
Right. Yeah.
And some of it,
loud is better, right?
Yeah.
You can be real loud and be real bad, and it sounds pretty good.
Yeah. And to me, it takes, and this is not a knock or a dig at rock musicians, but it takes, I think, more effort to play acoustically because it has to be cleaner.
Yeah.
Okay. You can hide a multitude of sins with distortion and fuzz.
Right. Right. Yeah, and it's amazing. There are guys out there that, and one was Tom Petty, that he was actually loved acoustic, and but that's not where he made his money. He made his money with the Heartbreakers and all that. So interesting stuff. Now you brought a guitar along, and my gosh, it is a beaut. It is absolutely a beaut. So what kind is that?
This is a custom-made Martin. I got this, I guess, about 7 years ago, and it's a Grand Performance body style.
Okay.
My first Martin was a D35, or is a. I still use that a lot.
So,
but this one I don't typically play outside in the elements. If it's too hot or too cold, if I'm sweating on it, I don't want to, I baby this one a lot more.
It's precious, as they say,
yes,
right?
Yes. And
it is beautiful.
Well, thank you. It's because I'd been looking for years. Like I said, I got the D35 in '76.
Wow.
And I'd been looking to not replace, but upgrade, get a new Martin with a little bit more bling, a little bit higher. Okay, that's a D35. How about a D41 or a D45 or something,
Sure.
And I looked at many over the years and just couldn't find one that played as nice and sounded as good as my old D35.
Wow.
And then found this one back in 15.
Mm-hmm.
And as soon as I started playing it, it was like, oh my gosh, this is the one. Okay.
You found it.
The only glitch to this story is the timing.
Oh.
Part of it is, sometimes you just have to bite the bullet and say, okay, this may never pass again, so I'm going to have to do it now.
Right.
Okay. But now it just happened to be Mother's Day.
Oh my goodness!
I had taken my wife.
So you bought yourself a guitar for Mother's Day?
Well, I took her to the aquarium for lunch, a Sunday brunch, right, on Mother's Day.
Soften her up.
No, didn't. And we were just driving around, and I said, "Oh, look, they have a new guitar center over here. I've never been to that one. Let's go in." Okay, let's go in. So I saw this one, and it looked different.
So it wasn't a setup.
No, it wasn't. This is true.
I thought you had already been and had it
all.
Oh no,
hadn't been there. Hadn't been there.
Go.
And so I had the guy get it down and I started playing it, and it sounded richer than my D35 that I'd had for 40 years. And I was sitting here, oh my gosh. And I looked at the price and I said, oh my gosh.
Right.
Yeah, because it was not quite 5 figures, but pretty close.
Right.
And it was like, and she saw the price tag too. It was like, oh no, this ain't going to fly. So, but somehow, like I say, I'm her mercy mission.
Oh.
So she acquiesced and said, okay, let's go ahead and pull the trigger on that. So,
so for Mother's Day, you got a guitar.
I got her. Well, I got her my guitar. Well, I had bought her when we moved into the new house in 2013. We moved from one part of Kingwood to the, a little bit closer to 59, and it's a bigger house and a huge wall. It got 20-foot ceilings and stuff like that. And so we had a little TV that we wanted to mount on the wall. And in the old house, it fit. It fit.
Yeah.
But this, it looked like a postage stamp on that wall. So we ended up getting a big TV.
Much bigger TV. Right?
90-inch.
Oh my goodness gracious.
And so I got her the Kimitron for her birthday.
Ah, got you.
But I started noodling around and playing with this guitar, and going back to when we first got here, before we moved to this area, I'd never even heard of Kingwood.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
And so it's like, okay, well, I guess this is just another suburb of the Houston area.
Right.
And I didn't know too much about suburbs because when I grew up in Dallas, I was in the Dallas city limits. I wasn't in Arlington or Farmers Branch or Mesquite. No, I was in Dallas. Okay. Right. And when we bought our first house, it was in Allen. But Allen had about 1,000 people and one red light.
Wow. And
now it's over 100,000.
It's amazing.
Oh, yeah.
It's just absolutely amazing.
So I figured Kingwood's just a Houston suburb. And then there was an article that came out in the Kingwood Observer. That's when they still had that back then.
Right.
And it was all about the history of the Kingwood area. And it was, it said the story went that back around the turn of the last century, it used to be called Black Cat Ridge. The area in between the north bank of the San Jacinto and what's Kingwood Drive used to be called Black Cat Ridge.
That's correct.
And it talked about how it was a boom town, oil boom town, and how it was rough and all of the, how seedy it was and all that kind of stuff. And it talked a little bit about like in between Atascocita and Humboldt, Moonshine Hill and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And I said, there's got to be a story in there. There's got to be a song in there somewhere. And so I started noodling around with it, and I was trying to find the right sound for that story. Okay. And so I took bits and pieces of that story and reworded them. The storyline is basically the same from the article, but I tried to wordsmith it to where it would fit with the musical thing.
Right. Right.
And so if I could do that for you if you like. Black
Not
Cat
only
Ridge.
would I like it, I would love it, because I've been in this area since about 78, and actually in the late 60s, my father-in-law at the time, he had some property up in Shepherd, Texas, and he and I would get in this big old Buick Wildcat he had, and we would cross the bridge up here at the river, the old steel bridge, and we'd always stop in Black Cat Ridge, and we'd get a cup of black coffee and a pint each of chocolate ice cream, and we'd proceed on to Shepherd. And that was always so good. I always look forward to that.
Yeah.
So the ridge has changed a lot. It's nothing like it was. But the history of it is so rich.
Yeah.
It really is.
Yeah.
So please, yes.
Okay.
Because I want to hear that guitar is the first thing. And the other thing is, now you've intrigued me with the story. So.
And see, the story, that to me is the most important part of a song, is what story is the song telling.
Right.
It was a seedy little town, just a hole in the wall, full of oil patch trash who were risking it all. Drilling for their dreams, one barrel at a time. Some made $1 and some made a dime. All making whole, all going through hell for the sweet black gold, just a gushing out of well, for a stake and a claim for a piece of the pie. Some are gonna bleed and some are gonna die. It was a hot summer night in mid-July, and the San Jack River was running kind of dry. Roughnecks and wildcatters getting their thrills just this side of Moonshine Hill. Some spending time with a bottle of Jack, some with Nancy. She had her own shack. It was rough, it was mean, it was dripping with sin. Not the kind of place to be caught dead in. Daddy used to tell me this is all I gotta give, and you better listen up if you want to live. Better don't cross the river, better don't cross the bridge. Better don't get caught on Black Cat Ridge. Just outside the original, the story is told about Dead Man's Lake. They said it had gold, 15 million in solid gold bars, on its way to Florida, but didn't get far. It doesn't really matter if it's yellow or black, if you put it in a barrel or you put it in a sack. Scratching for gold 1 inch at a time. If you ain't alive to spend it, it ain't worth a dime. Dad used to tell me this is all I gotta give, and you better listen up if you want to live. Better don't cross the river, better don't cross the bridge. Better don't get caught on Black Cat Ridge. Don't get caught on Black Cat Ridge. You better don't get caught on Black Cat Ridge.
you just blew me away. Oh my goodness. That song really touched on, I think, everything historically that's pretty important in this area. A lot of people don't know about. They don't know about Dead Man's Lake, which is now called Bender's Lake.
Right.
They don't know about there was a story about about a gold treasure, story about a golden bell. I don't know if you're aware of that one. A story about a woodcutter and his son and how they found this bell. And the bell was actually real, and it was here until the 1920s, and it disappeared, gone forever as far as we know. But Moonshine Hill, still there. And at one time, Moonshine Hill had over 10,000 residents.
Yeah.
It was much bigger than Humboldt.
Yeah.
And now it's just a ghost town.
Mm-hmm.
Really, really incredible. Thank you. That was absolutely wonderful. And wonderful is not enough. That was incredible. Have you recorded that?
I've got it. I've done it a couple of times at some different open mics. I did it. I think they got it on video over at the Monkey Duck. So I got that up. I've recorded it. It was recorded at Eddie's Attic over in outside of Atlanta. But as far as having a professional CD or something like that done, no, I haven't done that yet.
You're going to have to do that because I want to put it on our playlist. I do. I mean, that is so this area. It is so perfect. It is absolutely perfect. It really is. Thank you so much. Now you play other songs. You have a veteran song that you play. That was the one that was so touching during the luncheon last month. And can you play us another song and lead up as what it is? And
okay. We'll do the veterans thing last, but I've written, like I said, I like story songs that kind of, to me, words are important.
Sure.
It's and getting the right melody, the right tune to go with a story. It can make or break the song.
Right.
And so I've written a number of little silly ditties, more like satire or parody, or just little, nothing throwaway songs.
Right.
But, some comic stuff like Shel Silverstein would write, or,
Right.
And people nowadays are like, who?
Oh, my goodness.
But there was one that I did for when I was in corporate America. We had our own patron saint in corporate America, St. Dilbert.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And so I did a little Dilbert song, and then there was another one about...
You're talking about Gilbert, the
comic strip.
Right. That's what I thought you were talking about.
Yeah. And there's one that I wrote about, when you feel like you're going to have a perfect day. It doesn't really matter what side of the bed you're going to get up, because it's going to be the right side of the day.
Right.
It's going to be just your perfect day.
Everything's perfect.
Everything's perfect. Stars are going to align. And at the end of the day, you look back and say, yay, verily, they did align, but for somebody else.
Right. But not for me.
Everything that you thought was going to happen, happened for somebody else.
Oh, boy.
So all you can do then is suck it up, buttercup. That's the title of that song.
Oh.
And it's like, yeah, everything's going good, but not for me.
Right.
And so those are a couple of neat little songs that are more lighthearted. They're not as serious. They tell a different story.
Okay. All right. Could we start with the veteran song, and then, because then after that, we're going to have to lighten it up a little bit.
Okay.
So, thank you.
The lead into this song is I came home from school one day. I was a senior in high school, and at least my mom and dad thought I went to school.
Right.
Okay. And I proudly announced that, I think I've made a decision. I think I'm going to go into the Air Force. And they were not too keen on that because there was a little policing action going on over in Southeast Asia,
Right.
a little place called Vietnam, and that was still going kind of hot and heavy at that time.
I was going to say, timeline-wise, you were out right in the busy time of it.
And so they were not real keen on me doing that. But I said, well, I've been having a good time in high school, and I've been real active. And I've been on, captain of the swim team, key club, debate club, the one act play. I've been on the choir. I've been doing all this stuff. And I had all these things that said, yeah, but what about school? I said, well, I've never cracked a book, and I'm still doing A's and B's.
Wow.
And so I never, I was blessed that, things kind of came easy as far on the academic side. Right. But if I had applied myself, I would have probably ended up with a scholarship.
Sure.
But I was having too much fun. So I said, well, I missed out on the scholarship thing. But they got this thing called the GI Bill. So I'll go in, I'll keep my nose clean. I get out and go back to school on the GI Bill. And so that was the intent. And so I went in and got out right after a year after Vietnam ended.
Right.
And fast forward 30 some odd years, 9/11 happened.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
25, 30 years, something like that. And my son graduated in 2002. Our son, excuse me.
Yeah.
And he was at Sam Houston State. And sophomore year, Thanksgiving break, he came home and he said, Mom, Dad, I think I'm going to take a break from school. And we said, no, what? He goes, well, I want to be a Marine. Wow. I want to take a break. I want to be a Marine. I just feel like I need to do this right now.
Calling.
And what was I going to say? Don't do what I done did.
Right.
So it was like, I guess what did Yogi Berra call it? It's one of those deja vu moments all over again,
Right.
And I wondered if this is how my dad felt at that time.
Oh, boy, I bet.
And so what could I say to him? And so, keep your head down, keep your nose clean, keep your head on swivel, do what you're told, and probably make it through. Because this was, he was deployed to Iraq, and he was in Fallujah when it was pretty ugly.
Ooh.
And so he saw some things that nobody should ever see. Yeah. And things that you can't unsee.
Yeah, unfortunately, right.
And so while he was over there, I got to thinking about, well, what else could I tell him that would mean something to him?
Sure.
And then I got to thinking, okay, maybe I'm just being too selfish. What do people like him need to hear that people from my era can relate to or need to relate to? And the whole concept of, I'm going to tell you something I didn't hear. And so the premise behind this song is an old Vietnam vet is walking down the concourse at San Diego Airport, and he happens across a young Marine that's walking down the terminal, and this is the conversation they had.
Oh, okay.
So. The boy was not quite 21 when he went into the Corps. But less than 12 months later, he was in a desert filled with war, fighting over there so we can live here free from the terror of some zealots that have threatened you and me. Not old enough to buy a drink when he signed the dotted line, but brave enough to risk it all if and when there came the time. In the San Diego airport, he and I came face to face. In this young man I saw myself in another time and place. I asked, "Are you going over there?" "No, sir, I just got back. But I'm good to go if called again, if terror should attack." I looked into his eyes and saw deep into his soul, but he could tell by the way I looked at him there was something he should know. I said, "Son, I love my country, and yes, I give a damn. But things were somewhat different when I got back from Vietnam. I was called a baby killer, people spat upon my face, but I was proud to do my duty, to serve is no disgrace." Now I'm gonna tell you something no one ever said to me. You better listen up and listen hard, 'cause these words can set you free from the horrors and the nightmares you brought back for doing your part. And it comes from one who's been there, and it's coming from the heart. Thank you for a job well done, but that don't seem enough. For all the things you've seen and done when the going got tough, thanks don't seem enough. And thank you for your honor and your courage under fire, and for your commitment when through the muck and mire you kept on keeping on when getting home was your desire. Thanks don't seem enough. No, thanks don't seem quite enough. All gave of their time, but some gave a little more. All left home and family, but some left a little more. And all heard freedom's ring when it was time to heed the call. You got to know that all gave some, but some gave all. Some gave all they had to give, made the final sacrifice. But to rid this world of terror, it was not too high a price. And if you were to ask them how could they be honored best, they'd want their brothers to hear these words so in peace they could rest. Thank you for a job well done, for your service over there. In a desert stenched in terror, so we can breathe sweet freedom's air. Your service shows you care. And thank you for your honor and your courage under fire, and for your commitment when through the muck and mire you kept on keeping on when getting home was your desire. Thanks don't seem enough. No, thanks don't seem quite enough. Thank you for a job well done, but thanks don't seem enough. No, thanks don't seem quite enough.